So in this particular video, what we are going to discuss about is a component of allergic lung disease, an important section of hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Okay, so primarily this topic comes under the category of allergic lung diseases. Another section that will be discussed as a part of this particular topic would be eosinophilic lung diseases. That will need another video. Okay, eosinophilic lung disease. But here we are discussing primarily hypersensitivity pneumonitis. So the first question that we need to ask is, what exactly is hypersensitivity pneumonitis? Okay. So as the name is itself explanatory, that it's a hypersensitive immune response. It's a hypersensitive immune response, and it is affecting, the immune response is affecting lung, which is suggested by the name pneumonitis. Hypersensitivity pneumonitis, hypersensitivity means enhanced immune response. Okay, now since it's an enhanced immune response, so the immune response has to be enhanced in response to something. And what is that? So that is your allergen. That is your allergen. Okay, now what allergen, what type of allergen? That is the next question that somebody need to know. So allergen could be anything, but if we classify it into few categories, it could be a microbe commonly, it could be an animal protein, it could be a plant protein, or it could be something called hapten. Now what is hapten? Hapten is nothing but, it's not a protein itself, but it's a low molecular protein, low molecular weight protein. Okay, so in itself hapten is not immunogenic, but when it enters the host, it combines with the host protein. Okay, and when it combines with the host protein, so its molecular weight increases and sufficiently so that it is able to generate immune response, that is, it becomes immunogenic. Okay, so allergen could be microbe, animal protein, plant protein, or it could be an hapten anywhere, which on when these allergens enter body, okay, they generate a hypersensitive immune response. And when that hypersensitive immune response is expressed in the form of a lung pathology, we call it hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Okay, so that is just explanation of the term. Okay, now with this particular discussion, what we need to we can decipher is that whenever we encounter a patient or when we encounter an image, okay, of hypersensitivity, where hypersensitivity pneumonitis is suspected, okay, then definitely this suggests only one thing, that we need to know from the patient whether there is a history of exposure or not. So history of exposure is important, and when you are basically retrieving the history of exposure, the questions that you ask are primarily related to know that what type of exposure it was, meaning to what. Okay, and is there is a temporal association between exposure and symptoms or radiological finding. Temporal association means that the timing should be like exposure happened and then patient developed symptoms, and every time patient is exposed to that allergen, symptoms happen, or you have radiological findings pertaining to that exposure. That is an important history that has to be there. So history of allergen exposure and development of symptoms, it goes in favor of hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Okay, which appears clinically like an asthma. Okay. Another important history that we need to take is a family history of similar symptoms developing in response to a allergen. Okay, and we need to take about that if patient himself knows that what type of allergen he's exposed to and he get symptoms, it's definitely good. But sometimes, and in around 50% of cases, you may not be able to get the history of an exposure. Okay, so you have to suspect it only on the findings that you have. Anyway, another important history pertaining to hypersensitivity pneumonitis is the history of smoking tobacco. And why it is important? It is important for the purpose. First of all, it has been seen that around 95% patients of hypersensitivity pneumonitis are non-smokers. It has been seen that. Okay, so you may by this point you can simply infer that smoking is protective of hypersensitivity pneumonitis. No, it is not, because those patients who are 5%, they have hypersensitivity pneumonitis. These are smokers, and the hypersensitive pneumonitis when they have, it is very associated with high mortality. So before someone thinks that he starts smoking and is protected from hypersensitive pneumonitis, so if he affects or he falls in this category, he may simply die with hypersensitivity. Okay, anyway, so allergen exposure is one thing that we discussed. Okay, now next question that is important is about the natural history of the disease, and all these discussions have a role in understanding the radiology. Okay, next question that we need to answer is that what is the natural history of the disease? Now, natural history of disease is if we read any book, hypersensitive pneumonitis clinically or radiologically is divided into three phases. Okay, three phases. One is your acute stage, next is your subacute stage. Okay, then we have a chronic stage. Okay, but before we land up into this particular classification, and we'll be discussing every stage clinically as well as radiologically, we need to know only one thing. Okay, that what is the temporal association from an allergen exposure to the development of symptoms? Okay, what is the timing difference of the timing of the allergen exposure and the development of symptoms and radiological findings? Okay, or if I simply explain what exactly is acute phase, what exactly is subacute phase, and what exactly is chronic phase, what are the timings, when do you call it? So when you report a case of hypersensitive pneumonitis, by looking at the features, you need to tell, or you can tell easily, that it's an acute phase, it's a subacute phase, it's a chronic phase, or it's an acute and chronic. What exactly? So see, if I plot a curve, if I plot a curve, see, this is the curve, and I plot this curve, and I on x-axis I take time, okay, and on y-axis I take exposure, clinical symptoms, okay, or radiological finding. If I take this on y-axis, so you will see, okay, clinical symptoms are basically, and everything that every pathology that hypersensitivity pneumonitis is going to cause is primarily your immune response. It's the immune response that causes the disease. Okay, it's not the allergen. Okay, so how it's going to happen? See, every time patient has an exposure, okay, let's say this is the time of first exposure of the first time, and now let's say patient is having exposure continuous exposure. Okay, so if he's having constant continuous exposure, he is every time exposed to the allergen. That is one case. Another case could be that he is exposed to allergen intermittently. So next time he is exposed here, next time here, next time here. Let's say the the allergen is in his office. So every time he goes to office, he exposed to allergen, and that's how. So it's a classical intermittent exposure. Now, whenever he is exposed to allergen, let's say first time he's exposed to allergen. So at this particular time, his body is unaware of this particular allergen, and body is not sensitized. So body will get sensitized after the first time exposure. And when the body is sensitized, so sensitization occurs at this point, first exposure, after first exposure. Body is not aware of this particular allergen. After this exposure, body develops an immune response. Body will start to form antibodies. The antibodies. So at this point, antibodies are simply not there. But next time, if he's exposed to the same allergen, third time, fourth time, what happens? Now body has antibodies, so immune response will be heightened. Okay, and more importantly, this immune response will be hypersensitive in that particular patient who develops hypersensitivity pneumonitis, because every patient or every person, for sake of this, doesn't develop hypersensitive pneumonitis. Just everyone is exposed to one or other allergen, but all of them do not come. Only 15% of the patients exposed to a particular allergen, they come with features of hypersensitive pneumonitis. This means that clearly that it's also the host factors apart from the allergen factors that are responsible for the development of hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Anyway, so we were digressing from the topic. So first time patient has an exposure. Now second time, third time, okay, that goes with that. Now when he has first time exposure, he may have an acute phase. Okay, he may have an acute phase, but mostly he doesn't have. So he has acute phase only after first time. Okay, from second time onwards, because here you do not have immune response now. Okay, you do not have immune response. Why? Because your body is not sensitized. Now from the second time onwards, he may have, but he can have, okay, first time also, but the chances are less. So the immune response is generated at the second time. Now he may have third time also, he may not have third time also, but we'll take a classical case in which every time he is exposed to an allergen, he develops an immune response. Okay, he develops an immune response. Now since he is developing immune response every time he is exposed to an allergen, so all these phases that we just saw, all these phases, okay, these are your acute phases. This is acute phases, and so they clinically also they are acute phase, and radiologically also they are acute phase. So the findings of acute phase will be associated with an allergen exposure. So patient developing symptoms coming to you, have a chest X-ray or HRCT done, and the temporal association with exposure is there, then you diagnose it to be acute hypersensitivity pneumonitis. But mostly it's not the case, because the timing between the patient's exposure and he coming to you is quite large, and that is where the concept of subacute comes. Okay, which is the most common timing of the presentation. So when now let's say, do you think that between these exposure the patient's immune response is completely nil? So it's not the case. It will not be nil. So there will be low level of immune response always there. Low level of inflammation going in the lungs of that patient always there. Okay, and that low level of let's say we just show it on graph. Okay, this low level of immune response will always be there. Okay, so this low level, it will not be normal between the exposures. And if you really see that this low level of immune response is always there, so let's say this be the outline, this low level of immune response between this. So if if the patient comes to me at this point, if the patient comes to me at this point, okay, At this point, patient's disease will be called in subacute stage. Subacute stage. Okay. So the acute findings will be missing. Okay. But he will give you a history of exposure that every time he comes to you, okay, he has every time he comes to you, he'll give you a history of exposure. That every time I get exposed to something, I develop symptoms, and I also have symptoms without the exposure, but they are a little bit less. Okay, so that is the subacute stage. And this stage, it is progressive also. It's progressive. What is the meaning of progressive? That, let's say, patient started to have exposure at this point. Now the patient has at this point, so from this to this, the low level of symptoms that patient always have, that is in the subacute stage, those symptoms have increased from the time of the first exposure. Okay, this means that inflammation that is always there in the lungs has increased. Okay, it has increased. Okay, so this is about the subacute stage. Okay, another important point is that about the clinical features that patient will have. So in case of acute stage, patient will have features like fever, dyspnea, cough, but he will also be having features that are not related to lung. Basically, what we call them constitutional features like myalgia. Okay, but when the patient comes in between these attacks, okay, he characteristically has symptoms pertaining to lung only. All this what we are discussing has variations. Okay, you may be having subacute stage only, or you may have findings only on subacute with no acute attacks. You may be having acute attacks with no subacute stage, but classically patient will give a classical case of hypersensitive pneumonitis will be like this. Okay, now let's say what can happen is there are two possibilities. What are those possibilities? Possibilities like this, that patient might be, after subacute stage, after few exposures, okay, there's a possibility that patient gets at this point. Okay, patient is at this point, and at this point, let's say there are two possibilities. Patient can be either, patient recognize that I have this exposure, or he may have an advice from the doctor that you simply, stop or avoid that particular allergen. So the exposure is simply gone. Exposure is gone. Or another thing would be the patient, gets treated for this. Whatever be the case, let's say if this happens, the disease particularly stops at this point. But if the disease doesn't stop, so we know, that if inflammation is continuous, the next step would be fibrosis. Next step would be fibrosis. And the stage of fibrosis that it causes is called chronic phase. It is what is called chronic phase. Okay, so we have discussed all these phases. Okay, clinically, I have not entered into radiology right now, but this was important. Okay, so it was now acute, subacute, and chronic stages. Okay, and so that is all about the natural history of the disease. Okay, now let's enter radiology. Okay, so now what we're going to discuss about radiology is we'll be discussing about chest X-ray findings as well as the HRCT findings, and these will be discussed in association with the histopathological finding because they have an important role, okay, in understanding these particular findings. Okay, so when we enter radiology, let it be black. Okay, see, radiology of hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Okay, so in this particular thing, you know we'll be discussing about X-ray as well as HRCT. Okay, and we have three stages, so all the three stages will be discussed. So let's look at this. See, now in acute stage, we know what is exactly acute stage. Okay, in acute stage, since you know the patient had an exposure, patient developed immune response second time, third time, whatever it is. Now, patient characteristically will have what? Patient will have histopathologically, patient will have diffuse alveolar damage. Diffuse alveolar damage. Okay, diffuse alveolar damage. And when he has diffuse alveolar damage, what is important that this will cause diffuse alveolar damage. This will cause increase in permeability as well because the alveoli are damaged. So you will have, and patient is an acute stage. So what will be the characteristic cells that will be there? They will be neutrophils. They will be neutrophils. Now they are neutrophils, okay? And you have alveoli. So let's look at the alveoli. Alveoli, let's say alveoli will be like this, okay? And you will have neutrophils in this particular. Why? Because the wall of the alveoli is damaged. So neutrophil migrate will here, okay? And you will have what? There will be formation of neutrophilic exudate in this particular stage. And this nucleophilic exudate, so it is occupying alveolar space. So the opacity that we will see it will be an airspace opacity. It will be airspace opacity. And airspace opacity, characteristically, it could be consolidation or it could be a GGO. There are only two airspace opacity, but what we see here is consolidation. Okay, consolidation. Okay, and these consolidation characteristic definition of consolidation, it is ill-defined fluffy opacity. So it's ill-defined as well. Ill-defined as well. Now, hypersensitivity pneumonitis, it is not affecting a one particular part of the lung. It is affecting. I'm not saying it is not affecting one lung only. Right or left. It is affecting. It's going through your airway, and it's the allergen is going through airways. It is affecting both lungs. So that is why it will be bilateral. Okay, and it could be affecting different lobes. This particular thing is important in hypersensitive pneumonitis. Characteristically, it is the part of the lung that is that radiologically you see affected is mid lung. Okay, but remember, mid lung, upper lung, both can affect it. Even the disease could be diffuse, that each of these upper lung, mid lung, and lower lung both are equally affected. So this particular order you need to see in subacute and chronic stage as well. Okay, mid lung, upper lobe, or diffuse. All three are there, but primarily lower lobe getting affected, that is not seen. That will change the diagnosis, in fact. Okay. So now, so this is about the consolidation. Okay, so we will have a ill-defined airspace opacities that will be there, mid lung, lower lung, or upper lung. That is okay. And similarly, consolidation can be like a patchy. It could be consolidation, could be patchy, or it could be consolidative, nodular consolidation. That will be seen on X-ray bilaterally. Okay, same thing. Corresponding findings you're gonna see on HRCT as well. Same nodules, ill-defined nodules or consolidation. Okay, but you do not see characteristically GGOs are not there. These are frank consolidations because we are in the acute stage and the patient has symptoms which are constitutional. Another thing is that patient can simply also have normal X-ray. Chest X-ray could be simply normal. Okay, and you progress with HRCT and you may find ill-defined consolidation or this. So typically, since this, if you remember diffuse alveolar damage, okay, diffuse alveolar damage with increased permeability, this combo is characteristically clinically defined to be ARDS. ARDS. Okay, so it will have something like an ARDS like picture. Okay, so something like this. Let's look at this. like this. So this patient is obviously, this patient has characteristic ARDS chest X-ray. This is not hypersensitivity pneumonitis, but I'm just showing it for the sake of completion radiology finding, because I couldn't find, acute hypersensitivity pneumonitis. I couldn't find. Okay, that's why I've just shown it. So it's typical ARDS. Characteristically, we can for discussion of the ARDS, you can simply just click on the link that I will put the link in the description as well. So you can see this. This is an ICU patient. Obviously, all these primarily lower part of the lungs are getting involved. Okay, and there are some peripheral areas also getting affected. So typical ARDS like picture clearly seen here. So ARDS is also diffuse alveolar damage with increased permeability. This is the definition that is associated with ARDS. And similarly, acute hypersensitivity pneumonitis can look like this. Okay, then we need to have a history of exposure to this. Okay, so now next we move to HRCT. Now HRCT is also having the similar findings. Okay, consolidation. So acute stage is okay, but it's not that important. Okay, it's not that important. Now when we go to subacute stage, because that is a stage in which patient will come with hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Let's discuss that. And that is going to the most important part of this particular series, that is a subacute stage. So in subacute stage, patient will come and he will tell us that I have an exposure. I usually have exposures. I develop acute phase, and I also have a constantly running dyspnea that is progressing over years or months. Okay, that's what will the history over months at least. And if you want to know the timing is characteristically the patient has a 4 weeks to 4 months from the time of first exposure. This is the timing that subacute stage is, and patient comes in between the attacks in subacute stage. That is what the subacute stage is. And if you talk about acute stage, I didn't tell the timing. The timing is characteristically till 4 weeks. In 4 weeks, nearly commonly it resolves, and the attack or the clinical symptoms develops around 4 to 12 hours after the allergen. They peak at around 12 to 24 hours and they finally subside. Anyway, so we were discussing about the subacute stage. Now in subacute stage, what is important that regarding chest X-ray, again it could be normal. Okay, again it could be normal, or patient will again have airspace opacity. Airspace, but this time airspace opacities are typically GGO. And GGO will present on chest X-ray like an haziness, or I simply say increased lung density. You can describe it as haziness. Okay. So it could be normal or it could be ill-defined airspace opacity. That is your GGO, and those GGOs are nothing but increased lung density that you're gonna see, or it simply could be normal as well. So ill-defined increase in lung density, that's what we see on the subacute stage of hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Now, why it is so, and what are going to be the HRCT findings? So that is going to be important. What are the HRCT findings? First of all, we need to understand what histopathologically this patient will have in subacute state. Histopathologically, there are 3 things that patient will have. One thing is alveolitis. Next thing the patient will have is what? He will have granulomas. Now, granulomas, you will never find granulomas to be acute. They will always be subacute or chronic, because granulomas form when the disease is not able to get that particular thing out of the body. So the body start to form granulomas. So it can never be acute. Granuloma is a subacute to chronic immune response. So granulomatous inflammation will happen here. The third thing patient will have is cellular bronchiolitis. Cellular bronchiolitis. Now, regarding cellular bronchiolitis, we can simply infer here, bronchiolitis is that it is an airway disease. Okay, bronchioles are getting affected, and it is a type of bronchiolitis characteristically divided into cellular and one is constrictive. So cellular bronchiolitis is what? So cellular bronchiolitis is seen in hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Okay. Anyway, so it's an airway disease. We'll tell what are the findings. So alveolitis on HRCT. Now on HRCT, how these findings are going to present? That is an important question to ask. So on HRCT, your alveolitis is going to look like a GGO because your alveoli and the interstitium surrounding the alveoli is getting inflamed. So it will cause increase in permeability. So somehow it will cause an airspace opacity, that is your GGO. These GGOs are gonna be patchy. Okay, this is the first finding that is important. So the patchy GGO is what you're gonna look for. Okay. Now these granulomas, okay, how they're gonna look. So granuloma is simply will cause what? Just like like, example in sarcoidosis we'll discuss about granulomas getting presenting in the form of nodule. Here also they will present in the form of nodules, and these nodules, what are these nodules? These nodules are also but are so we define we describe nodule in what form? We describe nodule in two patterns of distribution, one related to secondary pulmonary nodule and second pattern of distribution we define it in terms of distribution in the whole lung. Okay, so related to secondary pulmonary nodule, the distribution pattern of these nodules is characteristically centrilobular. Okay, characteristically centrilobular. If this is your secondary pulmonary nodule, so they are here, okay, around the bronchi or around the central branch of pulmonary artery, and in response to the lung or in relation to the lung, they are, I have just told that in almost all stages, mid lung more than upper lobe, more than diffuse. Okay, this is the thing that you, so you can have it anywhere. Okay, and another important point that we need to describe about these nodule, whether these nodule are solid nodule, these are ground glass nodules, or these are semi-solid. Okay, so very important point that whenever you call something to be a nodule, you suggest it by saying it to be a nodule, you simply mean that it has a soft tissue density. It has a soft tissue density. Okay, and that is why nodules are classified into three categories, whether they are solid. Solid means soft tissue density. It could be semi-solid or it could be ground glass nodules. Okay, so here soft tissue density is not there. Okay, it's a little bit less denser. The type of nodule that we see here is ground glass nodules. And in some parts of literature, you will simply see it that they have explained it not to be called as nodule, because nodules by itself gives an impression of soft tissue density. Here it is not soft tissue. It's a little bit less denser. It appears like a ground glass. Okay, but it doesn't obscure the vessels behind it. That's why it is called ground glass nodules. And in some literature, it has been told that you simply mention it as ground glass opacities, centrilobular ground glass opacities rather than nodules to avoid giving a false expression. Okay, so these are ground glass nodules, centrilobular in location, mid, this is one thing that is associated with the granulomas. And third important thing that we see is cellular bronchiolitis. It's an airway involvement. And airway involvement, what type of airway involvement? Large airway or small airway? Okay, so it characteristically involves small airway involvement. And small airway involvement presents as mosaic perfusion and air trapping. Okay, air trapping, that is a third HRCT finding that we look for. We suspect hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Okay, mosaic perfusion, air trapping. Mosaic perfusion is nothing but you will see patches of trapped air, but the term that you use air trapping only on post expiratory scan. Okay, you cannot use this term on inspiratory scan. On inspiratory scan, we use mosaic perfusion because air trapping means that air is trapped. So patient expires, and you will see areas, which are still black, still hypodense. Okay, and this is mosaic perfusion is seen in inspiratory scan. Okay, where you see areas where density is low and adjoining areas is, density is high. That is characteristic mosaic perfusion is seen, and it suggests that airway disease is there. Okay, so cellular bronchiolitis associated, these findings are this. And obviously, since airway is also involved, you can find bronchial thickening. Okay, bronchial thickening can also be there. And cellular bronchiolitis, if when we when we'll have a discussion on cellular bronchiolitis or type of bronchiolitis, we'll tell that cellular bronchiolitis also have central lobular nodules. They can have central lobular nodules in itself. Central lobular GGOs are also a part of these. What I discussed, these parts, they are also part of cellular bronchiolitis histopathologically because of peribronchial granulomas. Okay, so leaving that aside, we will discuss that time only. But right now, these are three findings and and the stage that we are discussing here is subacute stage. So these are the findings of subacute stage of hypersensitivity pneumonitis, the most common stage in which the patient is going to be present. Okay, three histopathological findings and three HRCT findings corresponding to that. Okay, now we need to look exactly how do they present. So let's look at the image. See this image. Okay, see this image. This is a chest X-ray image. In this chest X-ray image, only thing that I can tell, the patient is having increased lung density. Okay, patient is having increased lung density. That is the only thing. Increased lung density bilaterally, and more in this particular part or in this particular part. Okay, so you can call it to be GGO. Definitely it appears like a GGO, but you go and you just discuss the CT scan of this patient. So you see this. So on CT scan, we can see clearly abnormal findings. What are those abnormal findings? If you look at these, closely, let me zoom this. Okay. Now we can see the findings clearly. And if the history changes here, the diagnosis is going to change. So I'm telling you the history of hypersensitive pneumonitis was there. Okay. Otherwise, if I change and it to be, will make history to be that patient was a chronic smoker. Okay. And patient is asymptomatic, and we did the HRCT. What are the findings? Then the diagnosis is going to be respiratory bronchiolitis with the similar. Why? Because you see, if you clearly see, there are small nodules. Okay, this is a small nodule. There are scattered everywhere. It's like small nodules that are there. This nodule, this nodule, this nodule, this nodule. And if you clearly see, they are in the center of the secondary pulmonary nodule. Okay, they are in the center of secondary pulmonary nodule. So there are small nodules scattered in bilateral lung fields, which we can clearly see on this particular section. Okay, and these are not solid nodules. Okay, these are not solid nodules. These are simply, see, this is a nodule. Look at this nodule. Now this nodule is characteristically a GGO, ground glass nodule. Okay, ground glass nodule, and it is centrilobular. How we know that it is centrilobular? So every nodule, they are spaced, uniformly spaced. Okay, every nodule is separated by each other's other nodules, at equidistant area. Okay, and it is sparing the subpleural area. Okay, so this particular sparing the periphyseal area. This is the fissure, so it is sparing this periphyseal area. You can see this. This is sparing subpleural area, which is a typical areas of perilymphatic nodules. So these centrilobular nodules that are scattered, which are histopathologically associated with granulomatous inflammation in hypersensitivity pneumonitis, this suggests to me that this patient, if he has a history of allergen exposure, or he gives me a history consistent with hypersensitivity pneumonitis, I'll make this a diagnosis of subacute stage. And the same findings are going to be present in respiratory bronchiolitis. I'm just discussing because the findings, if the patient is giving history of the patient is a chronic smoker and patient is asymptomatic. Asymptomatic is important. Why? Because if the patient is also having symptoms, then the diagnosis that will write in a report would be RB-ILD. It will not be RB. This is the difference between RB and RB-ILD. Findings are similar on radiology, but in RB the patient is asymptomatic, in RB-ILD patient is symptomatic. So this is the similar findings of central lobular nodules that are ground glass, not solid. This is a characteristic finding we see also in respiratory bronchiolitis, but the history is gonna be different. So history, this emphasizes the fact that history is the most important thing when you look at a chest radiology. Okay, next thing. Okay, next thing that we're gonna see apart from this is the next patient. So same chest X-ray, near about same chest X-ray. The only thing that is ground glassing is characteristically more here. Okay, this ground glassing is characteristically more. So we also did CT for this next patient, and on CT you can see this patient to have this finding. Okay, on CT, HRCT. So let me zoom this also. And now let's discuss. See, here also what you can see, are you seeing nodules? No, we are not seeing nodules here. Okay, yeah, definitely there are few nodules which you can see like this, but these are not nodules. Okay, so these are ill-defined areas of increased density. Okay, and if you see closely, you can look at the vessels as well. So these are nothing but your patchy. So these are patchy. Okay, so these are patchy. Patchy is one word need to describe them. Areas of increased density. So what are they? They are GGOs. So GGOs, patchy GGOs. Okay, these are patchy GGOs seen bilaterally. Okay, and they are also in central lobular location only because they're sparing the subpleural areas. Okay, and they correlate with what? They correlate with alveolitis on histopath. They correlate with alveolitis. That is about the first finding that we discussed. And okay, next thing that we're gonna see this. Okay, see this particular thing. This CT. This CT is of another patient. Okay, so first look at the X-ray of this patient. Okay, that is more important. So look at the X-ray. I'm zooming this X-ray. What I'm gonna see on this X-ray is see this X-ray. So this X-ray at the lung basis characteristically, you see there is increased density. Okay, density is increased, which is goes with the GGO. But if you see this particular area and somewhere here also, if you see this, these are bronchi. Okay, these are bronchi, and bronchi, basically bronchiole. These at this point I'll call them close to their bronchiole because they are at the periphery. They have reached the periphery. So these bronchi or bronchiole, they are outlined by a soft tissue. So this soft tissue, linear soft tissue that is thickened. That is this wall is thickened of these bronchioles. If you see closely, so this appearance is characteristically known as tram track appearance. Tram track appearance, and tram track appearance we see in what? Peribronchial thickening. Peribronchial thickening. It goes with peribronchial thickening. Okay, and we see increased lung density here, specifically at the bases of the lung, bilateral base of the lungs, which goes with GGOs. Okay, these are the few findings that we can see here. Okay, now when we did the CT, so peribronchial thickening. Okay, patient might be having peribronchial thickening, peribronchial inflammation. Okay, which is non-specific. Tram track appearance. It doesn't mean, but if you see closely, the caliber also, caliber is not, the bronchi is not tapering. Okay, distal it is not tapering. So absence of tapering goes in favor of bronchiectasis. Okay, so we need to look at the CT only. Okay, that will tell us the diagnosis clearly. So on CT, look at the CT scan. This is a CT scan. Okay, and so on CT, if you see this patient, you can see again, you can see these areas. These are patchy areas. Almost all lung is involved. These patchy areas are what? These patchy areas are GGOs. Okay, These are GGOs. Everywhere, you see increased lung density, and that is GGOs. Okay, but other areas you can see there are small areas, small areas of low lung density. Okay, low lung density. This is a small area of low lung density. This. Okay, what are these? So these are areas of mosaic perfusion. These are areas of mosaic perfusion. Okay, okay, and although there is no particular normal area, you may call that area as normal. So you can see GGOs in association with areas of air trapping. Okay, non-specifically we cannot label it as air trapping on report, but it is due to air trapping. Okay, so mosaic perfusion and GGOs. Okay, this, and you may see, although there is no normal area I could see on this particular snapshot, but we can have normal area as well. Okay, that is not affected by the disease. So if we see these areas in conjunction, okay, together, this is a typical sign that if you see GGOs with mosaic perfusion, and let's say if this had normal areas as well, so this form a typical Hadge's sign. Okay, Hadge's sign. Okay, this sign is known as Hadge's sign. Okay, Hadge's sign is a name. Now that is about the sign, but if you look closely, can you look at the airway of this patient? So this is the hilar location, parahilar location, and if you follow these airways are dilated. Clearly they are dilated, they are irregular. Okay, and if you go towards the periphery, you see there's the normal tapering which should be there. The airway should taper as we go towards periphery. This airway is not tapering, so there is an absence of tapering. There is absence of tapering. Okay, which we also see on X-ray. So just on X-ray, and if you look closely, this is thickened also. So there is a peribronchial thickening as well. These these features suggest to label it as bronchiectasis. Okay, now I'm seeing bronchiectasis in this particular CT scan in association with mosaic perfusion, in association with GGOs. Now GGOs, mosaic perfusion, okay, and definitely airway involvement. Okay, see, absence of tapering, and this is not bronchiolitis, this is bronchiectasis. Okay, this cannot be called as bronchiolitis. Obviously there would have been bronchiolitis as well. So these suggest to me that obviously the patient is in subacute stage, but you can call also, you cannot clearly say, but the patient has started going into chronic phase as well. Why? Because bronchiectasis, or classically if I tell it to be traction bronchiectasis, that happens secondary to fibrosis, okay, is a feature that I am going to tell in the chronic phase. Okay, this happens in chronic hypersensitivity pneumonitis. So this patient should be labeled clearly as subacute to chronic, because it is showing subacute to chronic. So it is showing features of chronic hypersensitivity pneumonitis as well. Okay, and that is an important point. Why? Because even if the patient starts to have, uh, chronic or fibrosis, so let's discuss chronic stage. So even if the patient starts to have chronic stage, or patients start to form fibrosis, fibrotic opacities, okay, these fibrotic opacities, this doesn't mean that even if the patient comes in chronic stage, patient will not have features pertaining to subacute, because subacute stage, what does it tell? Subacute stage tells that inflammation is ongoing inflammation. And when you have ongoing inflammation, you have GGOs, you have central lobular nodules, okay, and you have cellular bronchiolitis. These are features of ongoing inflammation. So GGOs as central lobular nodules. This suggests what? These features suggest what? This suggests active disease. They suggest active disease or ongoing inflammation. And if in conjunction, if these findings can be together, very commonly you will see patient developing fibrosis. Okay, and patient is also showing these three findings, patient can have together. So this suggests what? That patient has an active disease, and patient has started to form fibrotic opacities as well. This means that time has been it has been quite a long time, because now patient is entering into the chronic phase as well, but there'll be low level ongoing inflammation is always there. So that is the inference that we take that. So superimposed subacute findings are always there in the chronic hypersensitive pneumonitis. And in chronic these fibrotic opacities, just like anywhere, they will also be having the same distribution of that mid lung, upper lung, and diffuse. And these fibrotic opacities will have secondary changes. Okay, fibrotic opacities will primarily they will look like what? Reticular opacities, reticular opacities. Okay, and secondarily they will have what? Traction bronchiectasis. What else other than this? In cases which fibrosis progresses so much that alveolar walls are broken down, then it will cause what? Honeycombing. Okay, and obviously these findings of superimposed findings of acute hypersensitivity pneumonitis will always be there. Okay, and it can involve the whole of the lung, upper lung, mid lung, in every way. Okay, but the only thing is that if it affects primarily lower lung, then it can be confused with, if you have chronic findings of hypersensitive pneumonitis together with uh, you know subacute findings, then it becomes difficult to differentiate or it from what? UIP, NSIP, and organizing pneumonia, and we're going to discuss how we are going to differentiate into this. Okay, so these are the findings of chronic. So let's look at the findings on image. So see this. So these are the findings we see in chronic hypersensitivity pneumonitis. So this is this particular part of the snapshot clearly suggests you what? This is your honeycombing. This is your honeycombing. Okay, and other areas you can see this particular part. Okay, first look at this. Okay, there is honeycombing. Okay, there is also septal thickening. Okay, so there are reticular opacities as well. You can see there's septal thickening. These are characteristic in subpleural location, and the part of the lung that they are right now is around mid. They are in the mid part. Okay, you can see the trachea just bifurcated, and so it's not a lower part. Okay, and this is the lower part. So in lower part, what you see, lower part of lungs, you can see areas of mosaic perfusion. These are mosaic perfusion areas. There are obviously there are areas of reticular opacities as well. Reticular opacities are there in all four snapshots. You see, these are the areas of fibrosis. These are the area of fibrosis. Okay, these are areas of fibrosis, and these are what? Mosaic perfusion areas of air trapping. These are there. Okay, now again, see, this is the area of honeycombing. These are areas of honeycombing. Okay, this is honeycombing. These are areas of mosaic perfusion. Okay, and you also see there's a slight increase in the lung density somewhere. Okay, so we see areas of mosaic perfusion. Okay, characteristically honeycombing and reticular opacity. So it goes in the favor of chronic. And mosaic perfusion, what does mosaic perfusion suggest? Mosaic perfusion suggests to be small airway disease, and it's a finding of what? It's a finding of subacute stage. So we have seen finding of subacute stage overlapped with the findings of chronic stage. So it's basically what? It's a chronic hypersensitive pneumonitis which superimpose subacute findings. So now let's look at the coronal CT of the same patient. So when you look at the coronal CT, this is the same patient's coronal CT, and you can characteristically see here what findings we discussed. These are findings of hypersensitive pneumonitis in the upper to mid part. Okay, you can see reticular opacities. These are the reticular opacities. Okay, and areas of mosaic perfusion that we saw in the axial sections. These are okay, and we can also see probably this is, although I cannot tell with surety, but it looks like to be bronchiectasis. Okay, bronchiectatic cavity. Okay, but so we can make out but although we'll discuss it later how to differentiate it from since you have honeycombing, so the finding you need to differentiate it from UIP. Okay, and ground glassing, and all those features make it to suggest from NSIP. Okay, it's important. Okay, briefly I'll tell, just since you can clearly see the distribution is in the upper lobes or mid lobes, UIP is simply ruled out. UIP is ruled out. UIP will have these features primarily related to lower lungs. And there are other features which should not be there in UIP. So we'll discuss it later in the same video. So that was about the chronic stage. Okay, that was about the chronic stage. Okay, now let's discuss how do you actually make a diagnosis of hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Diagnosis of hypersensitivity pneumonitis. So when we make a diagnosis of hypersensitivity pneumonitis, we can clearly see, okay, the findings are there, but the findings are also overlapping with other disease. Okay, so one thing that is very important for making the diagnosis is the history. Okay, that is important, and the other important are lab parameters and definitely the radiology. So we have discussed in detail the first and third thing, that is history and radiology. What are the lab findings? We should have a look about them. Obviously, the patient developed, patient is having hypersensitive immune response. The patient after first exposure will develop antibodies. Okay, so we should have, serum antibodies getting done. And primarily IgG antibodies are those, but yeah, definitely you have IgM and IgA also forming in the body, but primarily IgG. So antibodies are there. Now, can you have antibodies in a patient who is exposed to allergen, but patient is asymptomatic, patient is fine? Definitely yes, patient can have serum antibodies. So they have a corroborative, supporting role in diagnosis, but they can be seen in asymptomatic patient as well. Next thing that is important pertaining to lab is very, very important. It's bronchoalveolar lavage. Okay, bronchoalveolar lavage. So how do you take bronchoalveolar lavage? Bronchoalveolar lavage we take, when we do fiber optic bronchoscopy, what we instill saline into the airway of the patient, and that fluid is finally retrieved. Okay, so we retrieve that fluid, and what that fluid is seen under the microscope. So when we see the fluid under the microscope, normally in a normal patient, so what is the normal BAL findings? Normal BAL findings are simply that 90% of the cells that you see in a normal BAL is macrophages. These are alveolar macrophages which will come in the fluid, 90%. And I'm telling the normal, not the hypersensitive pneumonitis. Rest of the 10% cells you see are leukocytes. And among these leukocytes, the most common leukocyte that you will see normally is lymphocyte. And then you will see neutrophils and other monocytes or small other cells, but primarily you see lymphocytes. Okay, so these are the normal BAL findings. Now importantly, what are the BAL findings in case of hypersensitivity pneumonitis? So regarding hypersensitive pneumonitis, you will see characteristically in hypersensitive pneumonitis the TLC is gonna rise. Okay, TLC is gonna rise, and what type of cells you're gonna see? So you're gonna see lymphocytes to increase primarily. In what stage? Lymphocyte. Obviously in the subacute stage. Because in acute stage, if you do BAL in acute stage, which you will definitely not do, in acute stage, if you do BAL, you will have neutrophils. It is in the subacute stage when inflammation has, been for some time, that they convert, the primarily the infiltrate is of lymphocytes. We know this. Okay, so lymphocytes would be there. What type of lymphocytes? They will be T cells. And what type of T cells? So T cells are of two types: CD4 positive, we have CD8 positive. So primarily the lymphocytes that we see in hypersensitivity pneumonitis is this CD8 positive cell. Okay, now this finding is very important. Why? We have read it during our days of PG preparation as well, that how do we differentiate in BAL or in bronchoalveolar lavage from, between two diagnoses, that is hypersensitive pneumonitis and sarcoidosis. Although clinically and radiologically they are quite different. See, so we form a ratio of CD4 to CD8. This ratio is normally 1.8 is to 1. This means that CD4 are generally more than CD8. This is normal. This is normal. This is normal finding. But on hypersensitivity pneumonitis, let me take another section. So CD4 to CD8 ratio we take in bronchoalveolar lavage, which is normally 1.8. It's a normal finding. But in case of hypersensitive pneumonitis, we just told that CD8 cells are going to be increasing. So this ratio this ratio CD4 by CD8 ratio is going to be less than 1. So this suggests to be hypersensitive pneumonitis. In case of sarcoidosis, in sarcoidosis, the cells that are going to increase are CD4 cells. CD4 cells are going to increase, and they increase quite more. So the ratio will become, this ratio will be around 3.5. Okay, so these are differential. So lymphocytosis, we see lymphocytosis in other disease as well. Okay, so it's a non-specific thing definitely, but I just discussed about BAL findings. And if you have even after, so you have to take lab parameters, history and radiology together to make come down to the diagnosis. But still, even after this three things, you can still have dilemma where you might be confused between whether it's yeah, you have allergen exposure, but you have a findings pertaining to UIP, lung bases getting affected. Then in that case, the final thing that you are gonna go for is biopsy. Okay, biopsy. And I have told what are the histopathological findings of all phases. Those findings you will find in case of biopsy. Okay, that was all about the radiology of hypersensitivity pneumonitis. And only thing that is left right now is about some differentiation from other diseases, and primarily so if you differentiation from UIP, NSIP, and somewhere organizing pneumonia. See, organizing pneumonia characteristically presents with it also has patchy GGOs and consolidation. But if you have consolidation, you can obviously we in subacute stage, okay, we have GGOs in hypersensitive pneumonitis. We do not have consolidations. Very rarely we have consolidation. But if consolidation is there, then organizing pneumonia, okay, is a DD that you have to keep. Regarding NSIP, NSIP characteristically has ground glassing. Okay, it has ground glassing and it has reticuloropasties. Okay, but the distribution is very classical, and that is lung base. Okay, lung bases. That is the important point. And okay, so this is what NSIP has. So definitely you can be confused. You may have a case of NSIP that you may have a case of hypersensitive pneumonitis that will be confused in NSIP, because GGO and reticuloplasty you can clearly see as a part of chronic stage. You can have chronic hypersensitive pneumonitis, you can have reticuloplasties. As a part of subacute, you can have GGOs, and they can together happen. Okay, in the same time they can happen. So differential diagnosis NSIP is quite common. But definitely that distribution is the differentiating factor that's gonna separate them. Okay, and another thing that is important regarding is UIP. Another important point to differentiate is very important, which is very classical of NSIP, that is your subpleural sparing. Subpleural sparing. Okay, and if you see this UIP is classically that you see is honeycombing here. Okay, honeycombing and reticular opasties, and all those fibrotic changes like traction bronchiectasis you see in UIP. But the findings are primarily to the lung base and subpleural area. Okay, these are the important. See, three most important things to make a diagnosis of UIP is honeycombing. Okay, the honeycombing is most important thing. Okay, if honeycombing is there and this is the distribution, okay, it's UIP unless proven otherwise. And you only thing that you need to rule out is the third criteria of UIP, making a definite diagnosis of UIP, is that you have to rule out if there should not be findings which are inconsistent with UIP, and those are the only findings which you will see, and these are there. Okay, these findings are there in hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Example, GGO. GGO is a finding that is what, that is goes inconsistent with your UIP. So the findings that goes inconsistent with UIP are GGOs, and then you have this peribronchovascular predominance. Okay, you can also have cyst. Cyst can also be there in hypersensitive pneumonitis. Okay, because fibrosis can progress to cyst. Okay, and emphysema definitely. So all those consolidation, so take another section. The findings inconsistent with findings inconsistent with UIP that are important. What are they? They are distribution, abnormal distribution. If you have distribution of upper lung, lower lung, or say diffuse, not lower lung, mid lung. You have these, okay, they goes against UIP. Then you have, if you have GGOs. Now, if I go in detail, GGOs can also be there in UIP. Characteristically, UIP, which is having acute decompensation. If UIP has acute decompensation, you can have GGOs. Okay, but these GGOs will always be less than reticular opacities in case of your UIP. But if GGOs are quite more than reticular opacities, they go in favor of, they go against UIP, is against UIP. Okay, when we'll discuss UIP or other interstitial lung disease, we'll discuss in detail. Okay, and third thing that goes against UIP is your cyst. If you have discrete cyst, important point is a discrete, because honeycombing is also just multiple cysts getting in the row, okay, and sharing common wall, the wall is thickened. But if you have discrete cyst like this, okay, these are against UIP. Then you have if you have consolidation, it is against UIP. Then again you have, let's say, small airway disease with presenting with mosaic perfusion and air trapping. These are also against UIP. Okay, any nodule, micronodules, these are also against UIP. So these are few features, okay, which characteristically goes against and a peribronchovascular predominance is also important point. Peribronchovascular. This peribronchovascular predominance can also be seen in your hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Okay, it can be seen. So these features, and you can see that distribution of hypersensitivity pneumonitis is characteristically of mid lobe, and upper lobe or diffuse. Rarely we see lower limbs getting affected. We have GGOs. Okay, we have cyst also in hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Consolidation rarely in subacute stage. In acute stage, we have consolidation. We have discussed, but consolidation will not be there in consolidation is characteristically a feature of organizing pneumonia to be differentiated from HP. But small airway disease is there. Okay, so mosaic perfusion air trapping, if it's quite common in hypersensitivity pneumonitis, and peribronchovascular predominance is there in hypersensitivity pneumonitis. So all these features are there in HP, and this will help us to differentiate it from UIP. Okay, so when we saw this particular, this pattern, you see this pattern, characteristically says that this is not UIP. This is not UIP. Why it is not UIP? Because the distribution is an upper lung, okay, and you see areas of mosaic perfusion, which is against UIP. So the diagnosis is inconsistent with UIP, and with history and other lab findings, you can make a diagnosis of HP, in which you can make it to be a diagnosis of chronic HP with superimposed subacute findings. Okay, this means that active disease is there. The patient requires treatment because active disease is there. Active disease suggested by mosaic perfusion. Okay. Then next, if you see this particular case, uh, these are lower lungs, lower part of lungs. If you see lower lungs, because you can see this diaphragm started to come. So you can see here, what are the findings which we can see? The findings which we can clearly see here is GGOs. We have GGOs here. Okay, GGOs are there, and areas of mosaic perfusion are there. Areas of mosaic perfusion are there. Okay, and so these are the areas, and you also see thickenings. Okay, peribronchial thickenings are also there. Peribronchial thickenings are also there, and there are some reticular opacities there. Okay, and if you see, apart from this, okay, apart from this, these features are specifically at what lung basis? These are at lung basis. So can we pick a diagnosis of NSIP here? Definitely yes, definitely NSIP. But mosaic perfusion suggests what? Mosaic perfusion suggests only one thing: either the NSIP is getting what, it is having acute decompensation of NSIP, or there is some other disease, or there is some disease, other disease. You can find, definitely you can find findings of mosaic perfusion or small airway disease in case of this uh, NSIP, but definitely you should keep other diagnoses like his hypersensitivity pneumonitis as well. Now we move. So this is the same patient with the coronal findings. So coronal CT scan, you can clearly see the basis of the lung getting affected. Basis of the lung getting affected. See this, and you have GGOs, you have reticular opacities, and on that particular scan we also saw mosaic perfusion. So these findings, you can confuse them clearly with NSIP. Only finding that that suggests you is mosaic perfusion, which suggests the small airway disease is also there. Okay, so that is it. That is it about the differentiations. Okay, it from other diseases. This we have discussed central lobular nodules only, ground glassing, and this there's a sign also. The sign that we see, there's a name sign also of these multiple central lobular nodules, which I also describe in respiratory bronchiolitis, is hot tub sign. Hot tub sign. One sign, hot tub sign, and one sign we discussed last, that was head cheese sign. So these are the two signs that we discussed here. So that was all about the discussion of hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Thank you. And for more videos, just please subscribe this channel, and we'll have fun with the videos.